but I'd like to thank everyone for remaining right to the end. We've had an incredible day. The sun was rising here in the morning and it's now sort of coming down. I left that window without a curtain in front on purpose. Somebody said, close the curtain, we can't see you, but that's how I know I'm alive. I can see the light coming through. It goes from light to day and then to night again. And to Jasmine Hill, thank you. Leonie Payne, Made in Oz, our keynote, Dr. Roba Abbas.
Oh no.
It's a great time for technology failure.
Oh, no. We've lost you.
Oh, the end.
Katina,
Dr.
you've gone all
Sonia.
crackly.
Okay, how about now?
Yay!
Now we can hear you.
Really
This-
believe you said great things about Roba.
Yeah, well, I did. I came to Roba. I mentioned Dr. Ivatek, and the thing is, last year EastHouse, my car broke down, but I'm in the house now, so the connection's going to break down. But I just wanted to go through Dr. Lyria, Professor Lyria Bennett Moses, Professor Roger Clark, Jordan Brown, Jackie Faveri, Eusebio Scornavaca, who's I think the one that's up the latest in Baltimore, Alex Harrington, Marcus Wiggin, you legends. Thanks for just doing everything you could to be here today, the whole day.
Oh no.
Not again.
Take time. Frozen again.
Carry the
Katina.
round of
Make it
acclamation
yesterday.
to Katina when she can't hear it.
You're there again.
I can hear you. I can hear
Hey,
you.
now you're back.
Okay, can you see
Now
your
you're back.
screen, Theresa?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it, Theresa.
Oh boy. Okay. Those are all really, really hard acts to follow, and I'm going to do a little bit of storytelling, old-fashioned verbal oral storytelling, just for a moment. And this idea is based on the invitation that Katina sent out about 5-minute provocations. And I've been playing with this idea for some time because I'm a socio-technical historian. Well, I'm many things, and we've talked quite a lot about transdisciplinarity the last hours. This feels like wondrous, magical days. And I've made reference to being a boundary spanner and an intellectual refugee because I have jumped around so many different careers and different areas of study, and it's lovely to be someplace where that has been a common experience that many have had. Just to say briefly for anyone who is joining that wasn't here earlier when I introduced myself, my name's Theresa Anderson. Until last year, I was a transdisciplinary associate professor at a university in Australia. And while I'm still based in Sydney, I actually left that university because it was hard to be transdisciplinary in the way that I wanted. And I think that speaks to some of the challenges we talked about here, about inside, outside. I'm a research fellow at the University of Illinois right now, and I'm setting up my own business to focus on compassionate and contemplative data practices. Roger, I was so excited by what you were talking about in terms of those layers and the challenges that have been discussed throughout. But to make sure I get to share my story, I'm going to stop talking about that and get into a little bit of this socio-technical history, because the story I'm sharing is because I am a child of the Cold War in many ways. My parents are refugees, having had their lives shaped by the cataclysm of the Second World War and emerging through the rubble of that in Central Europe at the dawning of the Cold War. Where they grew up was quite literally the Iron Curtain. And so my early professional career, as well as my personal career, were shaped by those experiences. And my first professional life was actually taking place in the closing stages of what we refer to as, the Cold War and the battle between the superpowers. I was a Sovietologist and a diplomat. And the very first job that I had was dealing with the black box of the Soviet Union at a time when we were talking about major powers having nuclear weapons. And one job that I had was to try to understand what was being written and said in the Soviet Union about Afghanistan and about Soviet Central Asia and the rise of Islamic republics there, or fundamentalism. Those peripheries, and that's given me food for thought. And then later on, when I did training in arms control, I started to do some further thinking on that. So the topic that I have here is really looking back as an historian that studies emerging technologies in the past, to gain some sort of gift of hindsight from that, to lead to some sort of insight for the present, and hopefully shape foresight for future. Now, I'm very mindful of what Pat said in terms of, you know, the future being very, very different from our past. I think that's always the case. I think the difficulty in data is that we think that we have mapped out what we know. And I would put to you that we only know what can be known in certain forms that are encoded, and we need to stay open. So the points that I've put on the slide here are, in a sense, just snapshots of lessons that I've been thinking about from that experience, that personal and professional experience in a time where the security concerns were nuclear. And I'm not saying they're not nuclear now, but at that particular moment, you know, there were periods, particularly around the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the Cuban Missile Crisis is a subject of study. It was very much a part of the early study I did to try to understand what constitutes a just war, what constitutes first strike. And this idea of MAD, mutually assured destruction, which is total madness. And I think the lesson I take out of that is that MAD is no model for a human future, and that we need to look at other ways. The challenge that we face is the politics of infrastructures. Technologies and artifacts all have politics around them. And that certainly was the case with nuclear technologies, and it's the case with our technologies today. The challenge is that in the wild, and this is why this notion of technology as a beast in the wild, I think is a powerful one to keep in mind here, whether you're talking nuclear or technological. There are forces and structures that will shape the practices and also the future design of other structural elements. So going back, for instance, to the Cuban Missile Crisis, one of the lessons that came out of that certainly was informing the professional practice that I had post that, because just for the record, I was not, I was born during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't remember much of that, but I do remember the years after that as a very young child being taught to hide under a table to prepare for nuclear strike. We lived outside Washington, D.C. at the time. And when I was working as a diplomat in Switzerland, the apartment building I was in had a bomb shelter down in the bottom, and I was instructed to train on a regular basis to go down into that bomb shelter, which was supposed to protect me if anything happened. For me, it was a great wine cellar. But in that Cuban Missile Crisis, what we saw was the power of service rivalries. So infrastructure is important. The beast still needs to be fed. So we have left the Cold War behind, but we still have weapons of mass destruction that have a whole infrastructure around them. And sometimes the worry is not about the nation states. The worry is about what's happening outside the gates, what's happening with people who are not part of the regimes and the regulations and the controls that we follow. And then the final point on this is about the power of the periphery. So one other lesson that I take from my personal experience working in that period relates to the rise of movements in Europe around the deployment of MX missiles by the United States in Germany. And this coexisted with the rise of movements like the Green Party and the activism that happened, where in something that did not deal with the US, something that did not deal with the Soviet Union, in that periphery, there was opportunity to challenge and to change. And I think I see that as a promise to take into the future. And that's what I wanted to leave with, is that idea that even though when things are in the wild, it is very hard for us to try to control them, we can still see promise in some of that. And I think I personally want to try to hold on to that. And I hope that storytelling is helpful at this stage. And thank you again, Katina, for giving me the opportunity to share that.
Thank you so much, Theresa. And with those words, I don't know if anyone can hear me because it's saying my connection is unstable. I'm not going to show my photograph, but to
We
be
hear you. We hear you.
You hear me, thank you. I've gotten a number of texts and chat private messages saying what a moving story that was, Theresa. And some people, it wasn't them themselves, but it was their parents in similar situations or in modern day conflict in other locations in the world. That you couch it in these terms and in terms of hope is so important for research like ours and practice like ours. It can look sort of very gloomy, but and horrible in different parts of a process that we are engaged with or even find ourselves within. And I think your message of hope is the one that I want to leave with. You know, we're here today, and as Pat Scannell said, you know, the future is now for the next 8 years. He calls that the future is now in his slide. I think we can feel empowered to make change. That's what our classes are all about, sharing with our students and sharing with our collaborators that we have the empowerment. People are powerful. Jordan Brown knows that with his work in film. People are powerful. They can start movements. They can start changes. And I also felt from your closing comments how much you couched in the Cold War terminology, perhaps what kind of, war on different kinds of ideologies we might be facing. Perhaps the technocratic perspective is one that we will be faced with and challenged by, as some states in countries seek to navigate towards an unregulated or deregulated space, completely and utterly allowing decisions to be made by AI. There are smaller cities starting to be enacted in different parts of the US as test beds that demonstrate this, or will soon be able to demonstrate this. Just leave all the decision-making to the AI. It won't make a mistake like our politicians. And I think we go back to the comments from Jeremy Pitt on democracy by design that were closely followed by Robert Abbas, very much interlinked, some of the things that Angelo Frugeri brought up, and then of course spotted throughout the day with different perspectives. With that, at almost 4:45 in Australia and too late, Eusebio Skornavaca in the States, I want to say a big thank you to everyone. Come again next year. We're going to have Mariana running next year's event. I don't know where, possibly in Sydney, possibly virtually again, but please come again and support the new blood. You probably won't be seeing me at the helm at all in the future. It's passing on the baton to those with the energy and those who want to create something different. And who knows if SINS, as once it morphed from the RNSA, will morph into something else. I don't know. Will it be socio-technical considerations of national security? I don't know. There's no reason we can't change the name, but it's time for the younger people who are now at that maturity level to step up as, we all move on. I wish everyone health, positive mental health, firstly, positive physical health, secondly. I wish everyone friendship and joy in relationship. We heard a talk by one of our speakers on social networking, one of the subgroups, but really, I'm so blessed that I'm seeing all of the people I love in the world, in academia, that I respect here. Thank you for your support, and keep healthy, keep well, keep in love and keep in connection with one another, and keep reaching out if you need anything. But I look forward to sharing the proceedings of the workshop today, as I think it might be, well, my last workshop personally hosting. But I really hope for new people to step up and say, Kat, I'm thinking about 2024. I'm thinking about 2023. We're moving on, folks. And that's a great thing about our future. Thanks for all the chats. Thank you to everyone. Toby Shoref as well in Oregon. You've been up so late. Kathleen Vogel, I cannot believe you're still up. Thank you for being the best co-convener, the best deputy director in the School for the Future of Innovation. We're so blessed to have you. Jordan Brown, keep sharing your videos. And Alex, nice to meet you. Dr. Abbas, thank you for the wonderful keynote. And everyone, Salah Hamdoun, thank you. May everyone have a great night. Signing off.